It was one of those golden Saturday afternoons when everything felt effortlessly perfect. Sunlight dancing through the trees, laughter rolling through the yard, and the familiar smell of grilled meat wrapping the air in warmth. I remember thinking how lucky I was. Eric was by my side, charming as ever, holding court at the head of the table like he always did. Family, food, laughter. The kind of scene you take for granted because you believe it'll always feel that way. Then Mark spoke. Just one sentence. One careless, harmless little question that cracked my world in half. "Hey, Eric, does that woman still work with you? The one who always tags along on your trips?" At first, I didn't react. I was still smiling, passing the salad, pretending I hadn't heard him. But inside, my chest tightened. Trips? Always? Those words sank in like cold water spreading through warm skin. Eric froze mid-bite. "Which one?" he asked, his tone too quick, too rehearsed. Mark just laughed, oblivious. "Oh, come on, you know who. The brunette, always posting those business trip selfies." And just like that, the laughter around the table died. The sound of the grill faded. Even the wind seemed to pause. I looked up slowly, my fork still suspended, and met Eric's eyes. He smiled, but I could see the panic flicker beneath it. I forced a smile, the kind you wear when everyone's watching and you're trying to remember how to breathe. "I didn't know you traveled with someone regularly, Eric," I said, keeping my voice soft, almost amused, the kind of tone that hides the tremor underneath. He laughed, too quickly, and waved it off. "It's not like that. She's from marketing. We just happen to be on the same team." His words slipped out smoothly, like they'd been practiced. But before I could respond, Mark, bless his clueless honesty, added, "Oh, sorry. I thought she was like your travel partner or something." You two were inseparable last conference. I'll never forget the way Eric's jaw tightened, the muscle pulsing just below his ear. He didn't look at me. Not once. My stomach sank, but my face stayed calm. I even reached for my drink, pretending to enjoy the sweetness of the lemonade while my mind started rearranging every business trip he'd ever taken. Inside, I could feel something shifting. A quiet, dangerous kind of clarity. The kind that doesn't explode. It simmers. I watched him joke with someone across the table, pretending nothing had happened, while I smiled and nodded like the perfect wife. But my thoughts were already elsewhere, lining up questions he'd never wanted me to ask. He told me those trips were all solo meetings, and that's when I realized maybe I'd been living in a story he wrote for me, and I just hadn't read the ending yet. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in slow motion. People kept talking, laughing, clinking glasses, but all I could hear was the hum in my ears, that strange hollow sound you get when your world starts to tilt. I caught snippets of conversation, flashes of smiles, the smell of charcoal and beer. Everything normal, yet nothing the same. I kept stealing glances at Eric. He laughed too loudly, poured too much wine, tried too hard to pretend. That's how I knew he was scared. When it was time to leave, he offered to drive. I nodded, silent, watching the sunlight fade through the car window as the city rolled by. My reflection stared back at me, calm, composed. But behind the eyes, something sharp was forming. I didn't say a word. I just let him talk about the barbecue, about Mark's stupid jokes, like we were still us. But deep down, I knew the version of us I'd believed in had already cracked wide open. That night, as I unpacked leftovers and rinsed glasses, I kept replaying that moment. Mark's voice, Eric's hesitation, my own forced smile. Something inside me whispered, "Don't confront him yet. Not now. Not when he's expecting it." So I smiled through the evening, kissed him goodnight, and waited for his breathing to slow beside me. Because while he slept, pretending everything was fine, I was already planning the first step toward finding out just how deep his lies went. That night, the house felt different. The same walls, the same furniture. But it all seemed quieter, heavier, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Eric was on the couch, half watching TV, half pretending nothing had happened. The flicker from the screen lit up his face in short bursts, and every now and then, I'd catch him glancing at me. Quick, nervous, almost guilty. I sat at the dining table, tracing the rim of my glass with my finger, thinking about how betrayal doesn't always arrive with a confession. Sometimes, it just seeps in through silence. Finally, I asked, "You never mentioned you travel with anyone from your team." My voice was calm, too calm, the kind that always makes men nervous. He sighed, not looking away from the screen. "It's not a big deal, Laura. Don't make something out of nothing." That phrase, "don't make something out of nothing," I'd heard it before. It's the anthem of every man who's already guilty. I leaned back, studying him. "Mark said she's always with you. Always." He turned to me then, eyes sharp. "Because she's good at her job. What do you want me to say?" The anger in his tone didn't scare me. It confirmed everything. When a man gets defensive over an innocent question, the truth usually isn't far behind. I smiled faintly and nodded. "You're right," I said softly. "I probably overreacted." And just like that, his shoulders relaxed. But mine didn't. When Eric went to bed that night, I stayed downstairs, pretending to tidy up the kitchen. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the old clock above the pantry. Every sound felt louder, every second stretched thin. I stared at his empty wine glass on the counter and wondered how many times that same glass had been raised somewhere else, in some hotel lounge, with someone who wasn't me. The thought made my chest tighten, but I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in past lives. This time, I wanted truth, not tears. When I finally went upstairs, he was already asleep, one arm draped over my side of the bed as if to fill the space between us. I lay down carefully, staring into the dark, feeling the distance that no touch could bridge. Then I turned toward the nightstand, where his work laptop sat open, the screen dimly glowing. He was logged in, no password prompt, no hesitation from the universe. My heart thudded in my chest, but my hands didn't shake. I clicked. The folder was right there. Conference presentations. I opened it. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Eric and a woman with dark hair and red lipstick, laughing in hotel lobbies, raising glasses at candlelit dinners. Her name appeared in a few captions. Samantha. My stomach dropped. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. He didn't even bother hiding it. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. I stared at those photos until the screen dimmed and my reflection looked back at me. Pale, steady, unrecognizable. There was a time I would have woken him, screamed, demanded an explanation. But that version of me was gone. Betrayal changes something deep inside you. It rewires your sense of patience. I closed the laptop softly, not out of mercy, but strategy. I wasn't going to expose him tonight. I wanted him comfortable, unaware. The best lies are caught when the liar feels safe. As I watched him sleep, I thought about all the times he'd told me those trips were just meetings. The memory of his voice, confident, casual, loving, made my stomach twist. How easily he'd lied, how effortlessly I'd believed him. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and typed her name into social media. There she was, Samantha Reynolds, Marketing Department, Boston. Her profile was filled with filtered hotel bars, captioned sunsets, and one too many work hard, play harder posts. I put the phone down and lay there, wide awake, the ceiling a blur above me. The sound of his breathing filled the room, steady and oblivious. That's when I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't cry over him, not even once. Instead, I'd collect the truth, piece by piece, click by click, until I had enough to make him feel what I was feeling now: powerless, cornered, seen. The next morning, Eric left early for a client call. I watched his car disappear down the street, coffee cooling in my hand, and felt a strange calm settle over me. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was loud, reckless. What I felt was quieter, colder, and far more dangerous. I spent the morning at the kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through LinkedIn, Facebook, company newsletters. Anything that had her name attached, Samantha Reynolds. Every post was a breadcrumb, and I was ready to follow the trail. That's when the idea hit me. Subtle, harmless on the surface. I created a new LinkedIn profile using an old photo of a friend from college. Rachel Myers, business consultant. The kind of woman people trust instantly. Then I sent her a message. "Hi, Samantha. I've heard you often collaborate with Eric Brown on travel accounts. I might be joining the team soon. Would love to know what he's like to work with." My finger hovered over the send button for a second, then I clicked. It took her less than 5 minutes to reply. "Oh, Eric's wonderful. We make a great team. I travel with him all the time. He says I make those boring trips worth it." My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. I just stared at that winking emoji, the digital equivalent of a smirk. Proof. Casual, careless, undeniable. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Each file felt like a small weapon, waiting for the right moment. By noon, I had built an entire archive: photos, screenshots, timestamps, even flight confirmations from his email receipts. Each piece fit together like a puzzle spelling one word: betrayal. But I wasn't rushing. No calls, no confrontations, no broken dishes. I wanted precision. Revenge, I realized, isn't about fury. It's about focus. I opened Eric's calendar app. His next business trip was in 3 weeks, Chicago. Perfect. That gave me time to prepare. I sat back in my chair and thought about how strange it was. The man who once couldn't go a day without checking in, now using company trips as cover for someone else. I remembered the nights I'd stayed up waiting for his texts, the excuses about late meetings, the exhausted tone he used when he'd finally call. I used to believe every word because trust had been my default setting. Now, my default was evidence. That evening, when he came home, I played the part. Dinner on the table, small talk about the weather, the show we'd been watching. He kissed my cheek, murmured, "You're quiet tonight." I smiled and said, "Just tired." He didn't notice the laptop still open on the counter, or the faint smirk I couldn't quite hide. If he could take his mistress on trips behind my back, then I could show up, quietly, elegantly, right in front of both of them. Over the next few days, I became an actress in my own home. Gentle smiles, casual laughter, all while my mind mapped every detail of his double life. I checked travel itineraries, hotel bookings, even the company's conference schedule. The pieces lined up too perfectly. Every meeting had her name somewhere nearby. It wasn't just betrayal, it was choreography. And I was finally learning the steps. At night, he slept soundly beside me, the picture of peace. Sometimes I'd study his face in the dark and think how strange it was to love someone who no longer existed. The man I married was a ghost now, polite, predictable, fading with every shallow breath. But the woman beside him? She was new. She was awake. She was dangerous in ways she never thought she could be. When I finally booked my own flight to Chicago, I felt nothing but clarity. No shaking hands, no tears, just resolve. I packed my bags the night before he left, quietly, efficiently. This wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was a reveal. If he could build his lies in plain sight, then I would tear them down, not with shouting or tears, but with elegance. And when I was done, he'd understand that silence can be the sharpest form of revenge. The hotel smelled like perfume and power, that blend of ambition and aftershave that always clings to corporate events. I arrived early, blending into the crowd with my fitted navy dress and a calmness that could almost be mistaken for confidence. My heels clicked softly across the marble floor as I checked in, using the fake name I'd reserved weeks ago. "Ms. Myers," the receptionist said, smiling. I smiled back. If only she knew. When I entered the ballroom, the hum of conversation was almost hypnotic. Suits, champagne, polite laughter bouncing off the chandeliers. And then I saw them. Eric and Samantha, leaning close at the bar, laughing in that careless way people do when they think no one's watching. My stomach tightened, but my expression didn't change. I walked toward them slowly, each step measured, like walking into a storm you've already accepted. When Eric finally noticed me, his face drained of color. "Laura?" he whispered, disbelief cracking his voice. Samantha's glass froze halfway to her lips. I gave them both a polite smile. "I see the marketing team's doing overtime." The air shifted instantly, a ripple of whispers, a few curious stares. I didn't rush. Revenge, after all, deserved an audience. Eric's eyes darted around the room, searching for a way out that didn't exist. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, trying to keep his voice low, but the panic made it tremble. I tilted my head, almost amused. "Oh, I'm just attending the conference." "Isn't that what loyal spouses do? Support their hard-working husbands?" The color drained from his face, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Samantha tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "I didn't know," she began. "You didn't know I existed?" I cut in smoothly. "You're not the first." My voice was calm, but every word was deliberate, sharp, measured, impossible to ignore. Around us, conversations faded. People were pretending not to listen, failing miserably. I placed my phone on the bar counter and pressed play. The screen lit up with photos, messages, the winking emoji that had started it all. "Funny," I said, "how everyone in your department knows who travels with you, except your wife." Eric reached out, whispering, "Laura, please, not here." He tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said, my tone soft but final. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to end it, and to let your boss know that company funds were used for something a bit more personal." His expression collapsed into something between fear and disbelief. I turned toward the bar, nodded to the bartender, and said, "Thanks for the show." The walk out of that ballroom felt like stepping through a different lifetime. Every click of my heels against the marble echoed louder than the last, like applause from some invisible audience. Behind me, I could feel the eyes, the whispers, the low hum of scandal beginning to take shape. But I didn't look back, not once. Let him stand there with his mouth dry and his world unraveling. I'd spent too long cleaning up his lies. Now he could live inside them. When I reached the lobby, I caught my reflection in one of the tall mirrors near the exit. My hands weren't shaking. My makeup was flawless. And for the first time in years, I recognized the woman looking back at me, composed, dangerous, untouchable. I stepped outside into the cool evening air, the city lights flickering like embers in the distance. The night felt lighter, freer, as if even the air had been waiting for me to finally exhale. I pulled out my phone, opened a new email, and began typing. Subject line: misuse of company funds. No threats, no drama, just facts. The same screenshots I'd once cried over were now evidence. I hit send, tucked my phone away, and walked toward the waiting cab. The driver asked, "Rough night, ma'am?" I smiled faintly and said, "Not anymore." The door closed, and with it, the last chapter of our marriage. A week later, the silence in the house felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating. Just empty. Half of my clothes were gone, drawers neatly closed, my ring resting on the dresser beside a note that simply said, "Don't call." I had moved into a small apartment near the water, the kind of place where mornings smell like salt and freedom. Meanwhile, Eric's world was collapsing. HR had opened an investigation. Samantha was on leave. And his promotion? Gone. Just like the version of me he thought would always stay. He called, of course, over and over. At first, I ignored it, letting the missed calls pile up like unanswered questions. Then one night, curiosity won. I pressed play on his voicemail. "Laura, please, let's talk." It was a mistake. She meant nothing. His voice cracked on the last word, and for a second I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered those photos. His smile, the wine, the hand on her back, and the pity turned to calm detachment. I deleted the message without a second thought. It was strange how easy it felt. The woman who once clung to every apology was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that closure doesn't come from them. It comes from walking away. And as I lay in my new bed, surrounded by silence that finally belonged to me, I realized that peace can be louder than any apology. Days turned into weeks, and each morning felt a little lighter. I started rediscovering small joys, the smell of coffee brewing before sunrise, the sound of seagulls from my balcony, the way sunlight filled the room without asking for permission. For the first time in years, I didn't have to check my phone, wonder about flight schedules, or decode half-truths wrapped in charm. I was simply living, and that simplicity felt revolutionary. Eric, meanwhile, was unraveling. Friends who once admired him now avoided his calls. Rumors spread through the company like wildfire, and Samantha's name became office gossip. Whispered, pitied, and eventually forgotten. I didn't need to witness it. People made sure I heard anyway. "He looks awful," someone said, "like a man who lost everything." I'd just smile politely and change the subject. Justice, I realized, doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it's just the silence that follows exposure. One evening, I found one last message from him sitting in my inbox. "Please, can we meet? Just talk." I hovered over the reply button for a moment, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't seeking closure anymore. I was the closure. Everything he'd destroyed had become the foundation of something new. Something mine. One morning, I drove past our old house. The curtains were drawn, the garden overgrown. Strange how quickly life forgets the people who used to fill it. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The memories no longer hurt. They just existed, like faded ink on an old page. I thought about how hard I'd tried to save that marriage. How I'd convinced myself that love could survive neglect. But love isn't a cage. It's a mirror. And when one person keeps turning away, all you end up seeing is yourself. I realized something beautiful in that moment. I hadn't lost a husband. I'd lost a liar, and in the process, I'd found myself. The woman who used to measure her worth through someone else's approval had learned to stand alone and smile while doing it. Freedom didn't come with fireworks. It came with quiet mornings and unshakable peace. As I drove away, I glanced once in the rearview mirror, not to look back, but to make sure he was exactly where he belonged, in the past. My phone buzzed once on the seat beside me, another unknown number. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned up the radio, rolled down the window, and let the wind drown out everything that used to keep me quiet. Months later, I found myself sitting on the rooftop of a restaurant overlooking the city. The same skyline that once felt suffocating now shimmered like possibility. The air smelled of wine and jasmine, laughter spilling from nearby tables. I wasn't the same woman who'd once stood frozen at a barbecue, fork midair, heartbreaking behind a polite smile. This version of me had learned how to breathe again, how to exist without apology. My friends raised their glasses, toasting new beginnings, and I joined in, smiling for real this time. Even my cousin Mark was there, fidgeting nervously as he sat beside me. "Hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "I never got to say, I'm sorry about that day. I didn't mean to stir up trouble." I laughed softly, swirling the wine in my glass. "You didn't stir up trouble, Mark. You just opened the door I'd been too afraid to walk through." His eyes softened, relief flashing across his face. As the night deepened, I leaned back in my chair, watching the city lights blur into gold. Somewhere below, life kept moving, taxis honking, music echoing from bars, people falling in and out of love. And for once, I didn't feel like I was watching from the outside. I was part of it again, alive, unburdened, unafraid. Later that night, I sat alone on my balcony. The city stretched beneath me like a living thing. Restless, beautiful, full of stories. My phone buzzed against the table. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten for a second. Eric. I almost let it ring out, but something in me wanted to see what ghost still lingered. The message was short. "I lost everything. Are you happy?" I stared at the words for a long moment, the glow of the screen reflecting in my wine glass. For years I would have written back, something forgiving, something soft, but not this time. I typed slowly, each word deliberate. "No, Eric, I'm not happy. I'm finally at peace." Then I hit send and set the phone face down. No dramatic sighs, no tears, no shaking hands. Just stillness. It was the kind of calm that only comes when the fire's done burning and all that's left is clarity. As the breeze brushed my hair, I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the silence, the unraveling. It used to feel like destruction. Now it felt like rebirth. I realized that peace wasn't something you find after the storm. It's what you build from its ashes. And sitting there, wrapped in the hum of the city, I knew I'd built mine. Before leaving the balcony, I whispered something into the night. Not a goodbye, but a thank you. For the lesson, the scars, the strength that only betrayal can carve into you. I used to think he'd burned our marriage at that barbecue, back when a single careless comment cracked the illusion I was living in. But now I see it differently. He didn't destroy me that day. He revealed me. The woman I'd buried beneath compromise and patience finally came alive in the flames. I finished my wine and stood, watching the city pulse below, alive, flawed, beautiful, the same way I felt inside. The pain, the lies, the humiliation, all of it had been fuel. And in the end, I hadn't just survived the fire. I'd learned to dance in it. My heart wasn't bitter, just wiser. My trust wasn't gone, just more selective. And my silence? It had become my sharpest form of power. As I turned off the lights and walked back inside, my last thought was simple, steady, certain. He burned our marriage at that barbecue. I just made sure everyone could see the smoke.